Hello, balls. My name's the one and only, and welcome to the carousel. This offseason is a little bit weird when it comes to the head coaching carousel because all of the best candidates are defensive or retreads. I think the only new head coach on the offensive side of the ball that's any kind of good is Clint Kubiak and Todd Monken. I also like a decent bit, although he is kind of old and I don't think he has the highest of ceilings. I do think he could be a good hire, and he is one of the head coaches I have getting signed to a team. But all of the best head coaches on the market are retreads or defensive. I mean, you have Stefanski, you have Harbaugh. I don't love Harbaugh, but he is a decent head coach. But for defensive, you have Jesse Minter, you have Brian Flores, you have Shula, you have Halfley. Salah, I think, is pretty good. All of the best candidates are defensive. Raheem Morris, I'm actually pretty high on. Vance Joseph is pretty good. Anthony Weaver seems to be pretty highly liked among NFL teams. So all of the best guys are defensive, and that's going to hurt teams like the Titans, like the Cardinals, like the Browns, like the Raiders. Teams that really need a quarterback and need an offensive foundation going forward and already have somewhat decent defensive infrastructures, but have no way to build that offensive infrastructure unless they get a high level offensive mind in the building. And there's only so many darts you can throw at the board this offseason. So that does hurt a lot of the teams that need head coaches in this cycle. And that's probably going to push them to hiring retreads. Like the Titans are rumored for Matt Nagy. And that's insane. Speaking of the Titans, let's start with them first. And I do have them hiring Matt Nagy. That is my prediction. It seems like everything's pointing to it for some reason. It's insane to me. I'm a Jags fan, so I don't really want the Titans to be a great team. But also, I don't want that to happen because that would ruin Cam Ward's career. That would be such a terrible way to start, going from Callahan to Matt Nagy as your two offensive gurus to build your career around. There are so many better options. Like if they could get a Stefanski, that would be incredible. If they could get a Mike McDaniel, someone that I think would be a great fit and is someone who has gotten a lot out of young quarterbacks in the past, especially that of Ward's archetype, is Daboll. I think Daboll would be a great hire for the Titans. I think he would fit perfectly with what you want Ward to do. You want him to be a playmaker. You want him to get out of structure. You want him to run a little bit. And you want him to be able to air the ball downfield, a lot like how a young Josh Allen played. You want him to be a risk taker. You want him to be a playmaker. And Brian Daboll has gotten the best out of those guys in the past. So I do think he would be a great guy to have with Ward. And as someone who has been somewhat of a young quarterback whisperer in the past, so I don't think Daboll is going to get another head coaching opportunity. I do think he is good enough to. I just don't think he's going to. And if he was going to get one, I think the Titans would be the best fit. But I do think it's going to be Matt Nagy. It seems like a lot of the teams around the league, for some reason, have a high opinion of Matt Nagy. I don't think he did a good job on the Bears. It seems like the offense has gotten immediately worse when he's joined the Chiefs. It seems like they've built their entire system around having a very low ceiling offensively, which to respect, a lot of the pieces on the Chiefs offense are very low ceiling. They don't have a lot of deep threats or high caliber receivers. But even with the receiving core wasn't great the year before he got there. And it immediately went from a team that isn't as good as it used to be, but it is pretty explosive, to a team that just traded in all of their explosive ability for just more dink and dunk, keep ahead of the sticks, and just rely on Patrick Mahomes to save everything. And I think that's entirely what the Chiefs have gotten by on offensively. And I don't think Matt Nagy has helped anything. I think he's probably made that a little bit worse. I think he plays it too safe. He's not aggressive enough. I don't think he's that up-to-date schematically. I don't think he's helped with the run game at all. And even if the backs aren't good on the Chiefs, they have a good enough offensive line to be able to have not the worst running game in the league like they had with their running backs. So I don't like Matt Nagy, but everything seems to be pointed there, so I'm going to predict it. I hope it doesn't happen. Next, I have the best job on the market, the Ravens, and I do think they hire Jesse Minter I think Brian Flores would be a great candidate and someone that they've looked into and is someone that I also kind of want to get hired by the Ravens because I think they would do wonders for them. But Jesse Minter does already have an in with the franchise. He was part of the staff a couple of years ago when Mike McDaniel was the defensive coordinator and then got poached to the Seahawks. So he has an in. He's definitely a great defensive mind as well. I don't think he's as good as Flores because Flores is kind of special as a defensive guy in my opinion, but he's definitely a really good one. He's taken a Chargers team that I don't think is that talented defensively. It's not untalented, but it's not one of the more talented. Like it's not the Seahawks in terms of talent. It's probably not even the Ravens in terms of talent. It is weird because the Chargers do have better like front personnel and the Ravens have terrible front personnel, especially if Madubuike isn't playing like he did this year. So we'll have to see what happens with him because there have been some rumors of medical retirements, which would really suck for the Ravens because he is their best pass rusher by a country mile. So if he retires, then the Ravens are screwed defensively no matter what. But I do think Jesse Minter would be a great hire. He's gotten a lot out of the DBs. He's gotten a lot out of his safety room. And the Ravens already have a great safety room. I think they'd be able to utilize them in a lot of creative ways. I mean, Kyle Hamilton, it's kind of hard not to use him in creative ways because he himself is so creative. He can do basically whatever you need him to and be the best safety in the league doing whatever. So it is someone that it is a team that has a lot of good pieces, but does need to fill out some of the spots, namely in their pass rush. And I do think Jesse Minter is a head coach that would be able to get the best out of that unit going forward. And I don't think you really need a great offensive guy to get great offensive results out of Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I mean, he literally won MVP with Greg Roman, someone who I don't think of very highly. So I don't think you need a great offensive guy. And if they do go for an offensive guy, honestly, I hope they wait and hope Matt LaFleur gets fired because as someone who roots for the Packers, I'm a Packer fan, born and raised Wisconsinite. Matt LaFleur with a running quarterback the caliber of Lamar Jackson, who's as good of a thrower as he is, would destroy the league. They would go undefeated and score 40 points a game. It would be obscene, especially if they still have Derrick Henry. That offense would dominate every single snap, and it would be incredible. That's my dream fit. Well, it's not my dream fit because I'm a Packer fan and I really like Matt LaFleur and I want him to stay hired. But if Matt LaFleur gets fired, he better go to the Ravens because that would destroy the league. That would be incredible. But if it's not Matt LaFleur, I want a defensive guy. My number one pick for them would be Flores. I just think Jesse Minter already has an in with the franchise. It does make sense. So I do think it's going to be Minter. I'm not super confident in it, but I do think it makes a lot of sense, and he is someone that knows the franchise. Now for the Browns job, I have Todd Monken. He's not a super splashy offensive guy. He's obviously not a Liam Cohen. He's not a Ben Johnson. He's not one of these great offensive guys that can come in and change a team no matter what. He's not someone that can fix a young quarterback, but he is someone that is very sound offensively. I think is going to be able to utilize the pieces on the Browns in creative ways. I think he'd be able to get the best out of Fannin and Njoku and Giddens. I think he'd be able to use the weapons in the best ways for them to be used. He's a big wide receiver guy. I think he'd do wonders for the receivers on the team and hopefully the receivers that are going to get drafted by the Browns because they don't have very good wide receivers. They do have good pass-catching tight ends. I do think he'd be able to use Fannin in really good ways. I think he used the tight ends on the Ravens to maximize their abilities. I just don't think the tight ends on the Ravens really performed well, even though they had every opportunity to this year. So I think Monken is a really good offensive mind. He is very sound. He's not someone that can change or franchise, but he's definitely very good. I think he will be very structurally sound. He's definitely not going to sink you. He's going to help you get better. I think he's going to help a young franchise and a young team get better going forward, even if he's not like a world changer. I do think he's good, and I think he would make a lot of sense. Other guys that would make sense, you have a Shula, you have a Minter, you have a Kubiak. I don't love the idea of getting a defensive guy because they already have such a good defensive coordinator right now, and he's also someone I wouldn't want to hire as a head coach because he's just so damn old. And I mean, you had the defense last year, and you still sucked. So you want a better offensive guy, even though I think Stefanski is a pretty good offensive guy. Um, so Shula, that would be a lot of fun. He's done wonders for the Rams. He definitely knows how to utilize a crazy pass rush in lieu of having weaker DBs, and the Browns don't even really have weaker DBs or weak linebackers, kind of like the Rams have. So I do think he'd be able to kind of kill a lot of teams defensively if Shula was the head coach of the Browns. I just think offense has to be the way forward. It was between Munkin or Kubiak, and I chose Kubiak for a different team. And I think Munkin is good enough. I think you're getting him off of the Ravens. And I do think he would help a young franchise. I do think he'd be good for Shador for whatever's that worth. So I went with Munkin for the Browns. For the Giants, I went Stefanski. It seems like it's that or Harbaugh at this point, and I have Harbaugh going to a different team. I think Stefanski, he's a great coaching candidate. I don't think he's one of like the very, very best head coaches in the league, but I do think he's proven to be a good one. I mean, he has brought stability to the Browns in a situation that should be the most unstable by far. They have Deshaun Watson, Shadur Sanders, a bunch of bad quarterbacks. They went to the playoffs while starting like 6 different quarterbacks. Now, a lot of that is because of their defense, and he's an offensive guy. But he has brought so much stability. He brings in a lot of structure. He is a good offensive coach, too. He utilizes the play action really well. He's good at sequencing. I do think he is good at utilizing his backs. I think he's good in the run game, even when you don't have the best offensive line. So I do think he is a really good head coach. I don't think he's one of the elite, but I do think he's good. I do think he would be really good with Dart and the offense. He'd get to work with Dart, Nagy, Andrew Thomas, a better offensive line on the Giants than he has on the Browns. So I do think he would do really well there. Get Cam Scatterbo, see how that goes. He's been pretty good at utilizing his tight ends. Obviously with Fannin and Njoku, he's done great with them. So it would be interesting to see how he uses Bellinger and Theo Johnson. Not nearly as talented as the Browns duo, but we'll have to see how they develop, especially Theo Johnson, someone who's at least a great athlete. So I do think he'd be good for the Giants. There have been some rumors. I do think he's signed on for an interview for the Giants. I do think it would be a good fit, especially with Dart. Get him in there with a young quarterback, help him develop. Some other fits, there have been rumors about Halfley in the past. He's a Giants guy. It seems like he has an in with the franchise. Or he's a New York guy. He does seem like he has somewhat of an in with the franchise, like a good relationship with them. So there have been rumors about Halfley. I think he'd be a good candidate. I do think he'd help out that defense a lot. A team that has a lot of pass rushing talent, even if they haven't been fully maximized, I do think they have a lot of talent on the pass rush. Obviously, with Burns, Carter, and Dexter Lawrence. Their DB room, not strong. Pretty bad, even. But he's also someone that hasn't been working with exactly great DBs on the Packers. Really great safeties, terrible corners. So you would definitely need to build out that unit with the Giants if you hire Halfley. But you would have to do that no matter who you hired, so I don't really care. And I do think he'd help out that defense a lot if they do go the Halfley route. And Shula, he could do a lot of the same stuff that he does with the Rams that he could do for the Giants. Just tee up a lot of the hyper athletes on the defensive line. He could probably do better at getting Dexter Lawrence going than he's been the past couple of years. So I do think he'd help out that defense. I'm really high on Shula, even though I don't have him being hired by any teams. It's not because I don't think he's one of like the 7 best candidates. I definitely think he is. I just think a lot of the teams are going to be desperate to get offensive guys, and Shula is unfortunately for him a defensive guy, so I don't have him getting hired. But I do think if the Giants want to go that route, I think it'd be a really great hire. I think it'd be a great hire for a lot of these teams. Um, Same with Halfley. Not as good as Shula, but I do think Halfley's good. I also think Stefanski is really good, and I do think it makes sense for the Giants. Raiders, I have going Clint Kubiak, and I think their best fit is Clint Kubiak. This is a match made in heaven, in my opinion. I assume they're going to go Mendoza, number one overall. It's him or Dante Moore. I think Mendoza seems like the safe bet to go number one overall right now. I think Dante Moore is more of a long term prospect, and Mendoza is better right now. And a team that has Tom Brady that is kind of more in charge, it seems like, going forward than he was in the past. I think Mendoza is the kind of guy that Tom Brady would like. I don't know that for sure. That's kind of a vibe check. I don't know the guy. I don't really want to know the guy. But Mendoza seems like a guy Tom Brady would like. Um, and I also think Clint Kubiak would be great for that roster. I mean, getting heavy and running the ball down teams' throat with their tight ends and Genty would be such an incredible formula for the Raiders, and something that I have begged them to do all year. Do they need to get their offensive line better for that formula to work? Yes. They would need to get their offensive line better, no matter what formula they ran, because their offensive line is one of the worst in the league. Now, Colton Miller will be coming back. That helps. Jackson Powers Johnson, not the worst guy ever. So, it's not like they're literally devoid of talent. They do have some guys on that line. But really, I just want him there because Genty and those tight ends, I think, would be incredible with Clint Kubiak. Also, they do have receivers that are good deep threats, which is something you want with Clint Kubiak. I mean, obviously, with the Seahawks, a lot of heavy personnel, utilizing a lot of big bodies, and then generating one-on-one shot opportunities for JSN. Do the Raiders have JSN? Obviously not. But they have Trey Tucker, and that's just as good. They have a lot of speed that can burn corners and DBs when schemed up the opportunity to do so. They're not someone that can go out and just win reps by being super talented. But they are fast, and that can be utilized by a really smart offensive guy, which Kubiak seems to be that. So I think this is a dream match. This is what I want. I think it'd be great for everybody. I think getting a good young offensive guy in there with Mendoza would be great. Now, he's not like the super athlete. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but he's not a bad deep ball thrower at all. And I think the more like pocket, play action, take a deep shot, I think Mendoza can do that very well. He's a lot like Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins did that incredibly well on the Vikings. So I think you get Mendoza on the Raiders with Clint Kubiak, get that offensive line a little bit better, and I think that offense can really be cooking. This is matchup. This is the dream. I would love this. And if Max Crosby gets traded and you have an extra first or an extra first and a second or something to really build out that offense, then you're extra cooking. Now your defense, maybe it'll be the worst in the league, but who cares? Because you have a quarterback and an offense that's heading in the right direction. I would love this for the Raiders. Falcons, my dream is Flores. He would kill with James Pierce and Jalen Walker and their linebackers. It would be so beautiful to watch. All of those athletes in the front seven would be so incredible under Flores. And those DBs, they could be flying downhill so hard, taking away everything over the middle. He knows how to utilize a great safety room, and Watts has been so incredible for the Falcons. So opportunistic, always around the ball. He'll get interceptions. I don't think they've been in a terrible defensive situation with Raheem Morris. But I mean, Flores is just a different animal in my opinion. Flores is a damn near generational talent as a defensive coordinator and a defensive guy. And with this Falcons, especially given the personnel and just how damn athletic they are. I mean, if you put Jalen Walker in the Andrew Van Ginkel role, I mean, you're killing the league. You're dominating. That would be so incredible for everybody involved. I don't even have any other best fits imaginable for the Falcons because Brian Flores is the dream. I think he'd be so perfect. I think him in the Falcons gear also, so much aura. It's perfect. There is no better fit. There is no more of a dream scenario than Brian Flores on the Falcons. They'd kill that division. They'd go 12-5 and easily walk into the playoffs. For the Cardinals, I have Robert Saleh. Now, I know Robert Saleh is not the most popular candidate. I don't think he's that hated right now, but he's definitely not a popular candidate. He's someone that I have a higher opinion on than like the average people. I think he did a way better job on the Jets than is given credit for. I mean, you see the job that Aaron Glenn did, and I don't think Aaron Glenn is like an idiot by any means, but it's still been so much worse under him than it was under Saleh. I think he brings a lot of structure. I think he brings, almost dropped everything. I think he brings a lot of stability. He's obviously not an offensive guy. He's a defensive guy. They're coming off a defensive guy, and it was kind of uninspiring for them as a whole coming off of Gannon. But you need to know a couple of things about the Cardinals. One, they kind of like to do this. They kind of like to go in weird directions with their head coaching spot. I mean, Gannon wasn't exactly inspiring when he was hired in the first place, in my opinion. They definitely like to go with like the performative, hypermasculine crowd. Robert Saleh is that in spades. Although it's real in this instance instead of Gannon. They like those like weird guys in the building. Robert Saleh is not that weird, but it is a weird direction for them to go in. It's kind of a weird hire, an out of nowhere hire, and that's the type the Cardinals like. And I also think Robert Saleh is a good head coach. He is like really good for the structure of a team. I think he's great for the culture of a team. Even though the Jets culture was dog shit, I just think that's because the Jets are a dog shit organization. So I like Saleh more than like the average football fan. And I do think it makes sense, given the Cardinals' history, to kind of go in a weird route, which Saleh would be, and I think that'd be a good hire. Now, the Dolphins, I have John Harbaugh. It seems obvious. It seems like they fired Mike McDaniels to go hire John Harbaugh. I think it's already been said that they've lined him up for an interview. It seems obvious. The writing's on the wall. John Harbaugh is going to be the Dolphins head coach. Basically guaranteed, in my opinion. Like, seems like the most obvious one in the entire cycle right now. And I don't love it. I'm not a Harbaugh guy. I don't think he's the worst head coach. Very successful on the Ravens. Very long career. Definitely not an idiot. He is very conservative. I don't think he's great consistently at hiring like great coordinators. Their defense was good pretty consistently, but Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator they have right now, really bad hire. Todd Monken was a good hire at offensive coordinator, but he is also coming off Greg Roman. I don't think he's great at coordinator hires. I think he's skated by for a while by just having Lamar Jackson. That being said, it's possible things just got stale in for the Ravens and him. Sometimes that happens. It happens with Mike McCarthy. It's happened with a lot of other coaches. You're just there for too long. It happened with Andy Reid on the Eagles. Sometimes you're just there too long. Things grow stale. The message grows tired. You're not winning enough, and everything falls apart because it's just so long to be together. And maybe that's the case. He can go to a different franchise. He can get the coordinators in there. He can really establish his vision, build out a great staff, get some better drafting in there, get a good quarterback, and then boom, you're off to the races. That can definitely happen with John Harbaugh on the Dolphins. I would just bet on better schematic guys. People that just give you a guaranteed schematic edge over the competition. They don't have a lot of offensive guys. Honestly, Mike McDaniels is the guy to give you the best schematic edge offensively compared to all of the other candidates. So honestly, I would have just kept Mike McDaniels. I'm someone that I really like Mike McDaniels. I think he's going to be a head coach again, and I think he's going to be a very good head coach again. So I would have just kept him. But John Harbaugh is not the worst. It's also like he also hasn't been hired yet, so I guess it's not literally a guarantee. It does seem like the writing's on the wall to me. Not my favorite, not my least favorite. He's not an idiot. He's not a bad head coach. He can come in and be stable, and if he hires good coordinators, they can be a good team again. I just don't trust him to hire good coordinators consistently, but if he can do that to begin with, well, then you're cooking. There are a couple of what-if teams left that if they lose in the first round, I think they could fire their head coach, namely the Packers, Eagles, and Bills. I think if the Bills lose, Sean McDermott's probably going to get fired. I think a lot of the talk about like the weaker competition and not getting out of the conference, that's going to get aimed a lot at Josh Allen is also going to get looked at with Sean McDermott by the ownership, and that makes a lot of sense to me because I don't like Sean McDermott. So I do think Sean McDermott could get fired if they lose to the Jaguars, especially if they lose by like 10 points or more. I think he's almost definitely going to get fired because I don't think he's that good, and I don't think he's earned the goodwill necessary to keep his job. For the Eagles, Nick Sirianni definitely won. There's constant turmoil on the Eagles. How much of that is his fault? How much of that's the players? Who knows? I don't think he's been great at handling the locker room. He's not very good at hiring coordinators, especially, well, offensive coordinators. Petullo, terrible hire. Brian Johnson, terrible hire. And if I remember correctly, Kellen Moore was not someone that was picked out by him. If I remember correctly, that was picked out by the GM, by Howie Roseman, and not by Nick Sirianni. So I'm not even going to give him credit for hiring him because there was a Howie Roseman decision. And Matt LaFleur, someone I think is really good. I think the Packers would have been contenders if their entire team didn't die in a fiery car crash. So, but there seems to be a lot of rumors that if they lose, he might get fired. If they get embarrassed, he might get fired. I don't think he should. I think he's a very great offensive mind. I don't know if he's necessarily the best fit with Jordan Love, but it's good. It works good enough. Like, they have a good offense. So I want him to stay around. I don't think he always utilizes his receivers the best. Like, I'm someone that thinks Matthew Golden is still incredibly talented. I think if you watch him, he moves incredibly well. He's still incredibly fluid. He has great ball skills, great route runner, he's good after the catch. I still think he's an incredibly well-rounded and very talented receiver, but he's just so underutilized by Matt LaFleur because he does that with every young piece in an offense every single year. So he definitely has his flaws and deserves to be criticized in some aspects. But overall, I think he's a very good offensive mind. I think he's gotten a lot out of a very young offensive team very consistently. I think he's one of the better schematic run game guys in the league. So I want Matt LaFleur to stay the head coach of the Packers. I hope he doesn't get fired, but there have been a lot of rumors. If he does get fired, the best fit for him, like I said, the Ravens. Dream matchup. I think their offense would be best in the league, like by a mile in comparison to the next best. I think dream, just, best fit for Nick Sirianni would be like a grifter podcast type of guy. I think that would be best case scenario for him. I don't really see him going anywhere to be a head coach, but you get him in front of a microphone on like a grifter right-wing podcast. Oh, put him on Barstool Sports. You got a superstar on your hands. It'd be incredible for them. They'd make so much money. Sean McDermott, he could retire. I really don't give a shit. It's Sean McDermott. Who cares? Other candidates that aren't getting head coaching positions that would be great for coordinators or head coaching candidates in the future: Mike McDaniel, Greg Halfley, Shula, Joe Brady, Dayball, McCarthy, Spags, Cliff Kingsbury, Anthony Weaver, Vance Joseph, and Raheem Morris. I don't like all of those. I wouldn't want Mike McCarthy for a head coaching job. I wouldn't want Cliff Kingsbury. I wouldn't want Joe Brady. I wouldn't want Spags. He's too old. I don't know that much about Anthony Weaver. Vance Joseph, I'm kind of lukewarm on. I'm not out on him. He's done a really good job on the Broncos, but he's also had a lot of opportunities with other positions that I don't know if he's fully maximized on. I do think he did pretty good for the Panthers. I don't think he did incredible, but not bad. That's a weird position. But the guys that I really like, I'm high on Dayball. I love Raheem Morris. Um, I really like Shula, Halfley, and Mike McDaniel. I think Mike McDaniel and Shula are two guys that are definitely head coach caliber coaches right now and should be head coaches. I just have some teams making some dumb decisions because that happens every single head coach cycle. Especially guys that are like desperate to get offensive guys that don't want the stink of a guy that's coming off of getting fired. Um, but I think Mike McDaniel, if you want an offensive guy, Mike McDaniel is the best guy to hire, in my opinion, unless you could convince me Stefanski's the best offensive guy to hire. I think it's Mike McDaniel. I think the best defensive guys, Flores, Minter, and Shula, are all incredible candidates. And like I said, I think Shula might be like the third or fourth best head coaching candidate in the cycle, even though I don't have him getting a head coaching job. Because it's just predictions. I'm trying to predict weird things. A lot of it's vibe based. So I'm probably wrong on most of these because my vibes don't have the greatest of track record. But this is what I have predicted. Um, if you have a difference of opinion, feel free to share it. And goodbye.